The day the last payment hit the account, I walked into the house feeling a quiet triumph. For years, the mortgage had pulsed through my life like a constant heartbeat, steady and unyielding. But that weight was gone now. I laid the keys on the kitchen table, letting myself savor the stillness of victory. Mayla's heels clicked sharply across the tile, matching the edge in her voice. "Perfect," she said, her lips curving into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Hand over the keys. This house is your sister's now." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. But Celine was already gliding through the living room, phone held high as she narrated a video tour for her followers. "And here's my new place," she chirped, sweeping the camera across walls I had painted in the late hours after work. The room spun, my throat tightening, as if every sacrifice, every sleepless night, had vanished in a single exhale. Words pressed against my chest. I wanted to shout that every cent had been mine, that this home existed because of me, but nothing came. I froze, bearing the weight of their smug expressions. Mayla tapped the counter impatiently. "Don't be dramatic. You've done your part. Now let Celine live the life she deserves." Heat rose beneath my skin, but I kept my voice calm. Leaning forward, I met my mother's eyes and whispered 4 words. Just 4, but they stopped her mid-smirk, her breath catching, color draining from her face. Celine laughed, waving me off with a flick of her wrist. Mayla recovered, narrowing her eyes. "You don't mean that," she said, brittle. Yet her hand shook as she reached for the keys. I didn't move. I leaned back, letting silence stretch, knowing this was only the beginning. When Mayla's finances fell apart, it was like a silent storm. No one seemed to notice. Bills piled on the counter, late notices tucked under magazines, and her constant hum insisting everything was under control. I knew better. I was the one who walked into the bank, signed the papers, agreed to a $7,500 monthly mortgage. I told myself it was temporary, a bridge until my mother regained stability. That bridge lasted for years. Nights blurred as I worked under the glow of my laptop, taking on side projects, answering emails at dawn, canceling vacations before they even existed. My salary went to the payments, side income covered repairs and upgrades. I carried it quietly, believing silence could be a form of love. Mayla turned that silence into something else. She told neighbors and relatives I was comfortable, that I bore no burden. My sacrifices, invisible by design, became fuel for her story that I did less than I actually did. And Celine? She had always been the favored one. As girls, Mayla cheered her smallest wins, Celine's solo in a school play, her passing math grade. For me, the bar climbed higher each time. "Your season will come," she said, patting my shoulder as though patience were a reward. I believed it far too long. Even Mrs. Caton, our neighbor, once tilted her head at Celine's car in my assigned space. "Why do they always take your spot?" she asked. I laughed, masking the sting, though deep down it mattered. Every concession, every quiet surrender, had trained them to see my sacrifices as invisible. And now, the day I finally cleared the mortgage, they were in my kitchen acting like the house had never been mine. Looking back, I realized Mayla's demand for the keys wasn't born that day. It had been rehearsed for years, whispered like prophecy whenever Celine faltered and Mayla needed to soothe her pride. "One day, this house will be yours," she had told her repeatedly, as if my work and sacrifices were placeholders for Celine's comfort. Celine tried her hand at everything. An online boutique that collapsed in months, a pop-up jewelry stall that drained credit cards, a wellness blog she abandoned when she couldn't keep up. Each failure brought Mayla rushing in to soften the landing. A loan masked as a gift, rent quietly taken care of, excuses woven at family gatherings about how Celine's creativity simply couldn't be contained. Each rescue only fueled her sense of entitlement. Why strive for stability when it always appeared at her doorstep? I became the contrast, steady, ordinary, reliable. To Mayla, my work in coding was invisible labor. Celine's faltering ventures were hailed as bold ambition, while Mayla praised the daughter who seemed like success, polished, photogenic, the perfect face of the family. I was the one footing the bills, yet she was the one shown off. The more I reflected, the clearer it became. My mother's smile when she requested the keys wasn't spontaneous. It was the climax of a play she had directed for years. Celine cast as the heroine, Mela orchestrating the cheers, and me relegated to the disappearing stagehand role. That night, under the weight of their expectations pressing in, I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a sudden greed. It was the story written long before I ever signed the mortgage, and they fully believed I would follow it to the final act. I watched Mela's hand hover over the keys, nails catching the kitchen light. The room seemed too small. Each breath lingered between us. I leaned forward and repeated the 4 words, this time slowly, letting them echo in the silence. Check your certified mail. For a beat, no one moved. Celine laughed, waving her phone as if I had made a poor joke. But Mela's eyes narrowed. She knew me well enough to feel the gravity in my tone. What she didn't know was how long I had prepared for this. Months before, when she first suggested the house be signed over to Celine once I finished paying, something inside me shifted. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I opened my laptop and emailed Graham Ortiz, a real estate attorney I'd met through a client. I explained I needed clarity, maybe even protection. Graham was calm, precise. He verified the title. Every detail confirmed the house belonged solely to me. He walked me through options most never consider until it's too late. Notices ending in formal occupancy, lock changes scheduled with civil standby, protective orders if harassment escalated. It felt excessive at first, almost paranoid. But each time Mela hinted at Celine's future in the house, I realized vigilance was my only defense. We devised a plan. The final mortgage payment would trigger the next steps. Documents were drafted and ready. A locksmith was scheduled for the morning after the payoff, an officer notified in advance. Every precaution quietly set in motion. So when I whispered those words to my mother, I wasn't bluffing. I was invoking months of careful preparation. The same silence I once used to maintain peace now became my shield. One signed page at a time. Mela's smirk faltered, her hand withdrawing from the keys. She attempted to recover, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Celine rolled her eyes, convinced I was bluffing. I let them believe what they wanted. By morning, they would learn the truth. 2 nights later, Mela insisted on a family dinner. She called it a celebration, though I knew it was something else. The dining room teemed with aunts, uncles, and cousins, drawn in by promises of a big announcement. I stayed quiet at the table's end, watching Mela raise her glass with her practiced smile. To Celine, she declared proudly, tonight we celebrate her new beginning in this beautiful home. Applause spread around the table, chairs scraping as people leaned in to hug her, congratulations spilling over in waves. I felt the fork slip slightly in my hand. This isn't Celine's house, I said, voice steady, controlled. Every payment had been mine. The deed bore my name. Silence fell for a heartbeat before Mela's laugh shattered it. Always the drama, always performing. Don't ruin the show. Low murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, polite disapproval in everyone's eyes. Celine leaned back, smirking. Relax, she seemed to say. Crash on someone's couch for a bit. Maybe it'll do you good. Heat rose to my face, but I ignored the bait. I slid my phone under the table, opening my email. Fingers moving quickly, I attached photos of the title documents, mortgage receipts, and the draft notices Graham had helped prepare. One click, and the proof was on its way to his inbox. Mela's voice climbed, triumphant, painting me as ungrateful in front of relatives. I watched her soak up their approval, unaware that every word only strengthened my case. I didn't need to shout. The evidence was louder than any argument I could make. When the plates were cleared and the laughter faded, I realized their stage was crumbling, and I had already moved the performance elsewhere. Later, stepping into the cool night, the echo of their voices pressed against my chest. I pulled out my phone, scrolling past unread messages, and dialed the only number that mattered. Graham answered on the second ring, calm as ever. It's time, I said. No explanations needed. We had rehearsed this moment countless times. Within the hour, a courier was scheduled to deliver the notice of revocation of license to occupy. Every line of that document had been drafted weeks ago, signed, notarized, waiting for the day the final payment cleared. Though the house had felt like a battlefield, legally it was mine alone. Graham ran through the rest. The early morning locksmith appointment, civil standby through the precinct, even a temporary protective order ready if Mela or Celine tried to barge back in. Nothing here was sudden. It was foresight quietly laid while everyone else mocked my caution. I sat in my car outside the house, dashboard glow illuminating the stillness. For the first time in years, my lungs expanded fully. I had spent so long shrinking under their expectations, bending to a peace that never existed. Now the balance was shifting, not with shouting, not with slam fists, but with signed papers and a single phone call. By midnight, Graham's text confirmed, courier confirmed. Documents will be in their hands by morning. I read it twice, letting my breath steady. I wasn't the powerless daughter they assumed. I was the one who prepared, the one who saw their story and wrote my own ending. Turning the key in the ignition, I drove back toward the house, calm settled in my chest. For the first time in years, the weight of choice rested in my hands, and it was mine to hold. Dawn arrived silently. No clatter of dishes, no hum from the TV, no voices drifting down the hall. Moving through the still house I had carried for years, I finally felt ownership. At the front door, the courier's envelope hung by a strip of tape, bold letters impossible to ignore. Notice of revocation of license to occupy. The words that had lived in drafts for months were now here, inked and undeniable, waiting inside by the entryway. I had already packed up their scattered belongings. Each duffel and box was carefully labeled: Celine's clothes, Mela's trinkets, extra shoes, bathroom supplies. Nothing was thrown out, nothing broken, no reason for them to claim cruelty. Order alone made a statement. When the locksmith's van rolled up the driveway, an officer followed right behind. Both greeted me calmly as if this were routine, which in truth it was. Locks changed every day. Notices delivered every day. Today just happened to be mine. Mela shuffled into the hall, robe loosely tied, her face creased with sleep. She froze beside the officer, then snatched the envelope from the door. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the pages, eyes scanning the lines. I watched the color drain from her face the moment comprehension hit. "You," she whispered, voice cracking. I stepped closer, steady and silent. "Check your certified mail." The 4 words I had given her before now returned, not as a warning, but as reality. She clutched the paper, lips moving as if to protest, but no sound emerged. By the time the new locks clicked into place, the house's silence no longer felt oppressive. It felt clear, as though something long overdue had finally been swept away. By afternoon, Mela was on the phone with every relative she could reach. Her voice carried through the walls, trembling with indignation as she painted me ungrateful and cold. She repeated the same line to anyone who would listen, that I had stolen the house from under my sister. But information travels faster than she expected. Documents, screenshots of my mortgage receipts, the title in my name, even the notices Graham had prepared began circulating quietly among the family. One cousin messaged me directly, "I didn't know you handled all of that alone." Another wrote, "She's been telling a very different story." The cracks appear quickly, her version losing polish each time the truth comes out. Celine's fury came next. She stormed into the living room, waving the notice as if shaking it could rewrite reality. "You promised me, Mom," she hissed, loud enough for me to hear from the hall. "You said this would be mine." Mela tried to quiet her, but Celine's anger shattered years of careful shielding. Their alliance bent, then broke. With the shouting came the resurfacing of old betrayals. The time Mela had used my savings to cover one of Celine's failed ventures without asking. The night Celine had listed the house online as an event space for her friends, leaving me to face strangers at the door. Every compromise I had swallowed rushed back, undeniable now that their arguments echoed through the walls. That evening, Mrs. Caton stopped me by the mailbox. Her eyes were gentle, her words simple. "It's not cruel," she said softly, "to lock a door that keeps stealing your sleep." I nodded, letting the truth sink deep into my chest. The house felt quieter than it ever had before. And in that stillness, something entirely new began to take form. With the shouting gone, it was like the walls themselves were bare wood, ready for a fresh coat. I started small, brushing new color over the walls that had once been covered in Mela's floral wallpaper. The smell of paint replaced the lingering scent of perfume that had once filled the halls. Each stroke of the brush felt like reclaiming a space I had surrendered long ago. I cleared out the guest room and turned it into a studio for my work. My desk now faced the window, sunlight spilling over clean surfaces instead of dim corners. The room no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt steady mine. For the first time in years, I welcomed people inside. Friends from work came over for tea, their laughter rising easily and filling the rooms. Mrs. Caton joined us too, carrying a tray of lemon cookies, smiling as if she had been waiting for this day longer than I had. The same rooms that once echoed with tension now hummed with warmth. I set a few new rules, keeping them simple. No guests without consent, no filming or sharing the house online. These rules weren't for anyone else. They were for me. A promise that my silence would no longer be mistaken for permission. When Graham came by to check on me, he looked around and nodded. A boundary is a contract you keep with yourself, he said. These walls, freshly painted and filled with light, were no longer just shelter. They were the framework of a life I had built on my own terms. As the house settled into its new rhythm, I knew the real test was still ahead. It wasn't long before Mela and Celine returned, arriving together one afternoon with tight smiles and polished words. Mela spoke first, wrapping her manipulation in the language of family appearances. She insisted on the need to appear united, claiming neighbors and relatives had misunderstood everything. Celine nodded, her eyes still flicking around the house, searching for some corner to claim. I listened quietly, then calmly laid out my terms. Therapy, both together and apart, and an apology that acknowledged the years of harm, not just brushed past them. Most importantly, the title was never to be mentioned again. Not once, not ever. Their carefully constructed performance faltered. They had expected forgiveness to be handed out as easily as another check to cash. Instead, they were confronted with a mirror. When they left, silence reclaimed the house. I gathered my papers and went to the notary, filing an estate plan that secured the home's future. If they ever tried to challenge it again, they would find iron instead of flesh. Driving home, I felt a weight lift. A house is just wood and walls. It can be bought, sold, or lost. But a home is different. It is the space where you refuse to give up your dignity. That was what I had created here, not with money alone, but by choosing to stop shrinking myself. That evening, I locked the door, watered the fern on the porch, and grabbed my bag for work. Behind me, the house stood quietly.